Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm sorry it's been a minute. Um, I've been busy, I've had life stuff, and I just needed to get back into the habit of making these videos. My name is Melanie Tana, and I make all different types of videos about stories and what I learned from them as a writer. I write novels, but I'm interested in all forms of storytelling, and I'm also really into some current pop culture things and events. And recently, I finished with my family the fourth season of Stranger Things, parts 1 and 2, and I just wanted to talk about them real quick and sort of what I gleaned from that as a storyteller. So, because it's parts 1 and 2, I'm going to be talking spoilers. I'm just giving myself free rein to talk about anything. I don't know how in-depth I'll get, but I'm going to reference things, and yeah, so if you haven't watched the show, definitely go finish season 4 before you check out the rest of this video. But if you have watched it, then I'm just going to be talking about whatever. Of course, there's a million things I love, and I could just talk about them endlessly. Of course, you always love the new characters introduced in a season, so Eddie is fantastic, but I think he's stuck because the actor really took care of that character, really handled him so well. I also think the performance for Henry/Vecna was awesome. He just did everything really well. I think he seemed to be, from what I've heard, a really hard worker and a really great performer. And so it was interesting to watch him tackle two different sides of one very dark person. Both sides are dark, but very different forms, I guess. There's so much going on in this season, and I think when I started watching it, I was really, really excited because I always will, I think, watch Stranger Things. I enjoy it. I've enjoyed every season, and I'm not always the most critical person, which is kind of why I do these videos, these what I learned, because I don't want to review something because I'm not super critical. If I enjoyed it, I enjoyed it, and if I didn't, hopefully I learned something from it, and that's what I try to talk about. But I did enjoy the season, and are there things I could critique? Yes, but overall, there are some things I learned, and the first feeling I had, even just after the first episode, was okay, they're proving in this season that it deserves to continue being a show. A lot of shows don't do that very well. They write more and more seasons, and they don't really increase the stakes very well. So I think right off the bat, you are getting the stakes. You're watching Chrissy go through this experience, and it's very dark, and it's the darkest thing that the Duffer Brothers have done so far with Stranger Things. And it's very compelling. Yeah. So you're watching all of this happening. I think each storyline with each group of characters was handled well and given a decent, like the right amount of time and attention. Even to the point where the boys out in California and wherever else they are, in one particular episode, they're not even present because they don't really need to be. I think the acting was really great. I think even though these kids have aged quite a bit, they still handle the freshman and high school experience, those of them who are that young. Even though they're not these adorable middle schoolers, they're still these relatable young kids going through it, and there's a reason we're still following their storylines, It's not just for the sake of the fans want more. It's like, well, what story could we continue telling that would be valuable? And I think they found that. And I wanted to talk about how I think that they found that. So, yes, there's a million other things I loved. I could go on and on about it, but I think what season 4 does, and what I think a lot of later seasons or books in different series and shows could do, is address the trauma that people are going through. So you have this setup where Chrissy's obviously dealing with issues regarding her mom, and she is tormented by this being that is showing her like just darkest feelings about herself, and it ends up being kids going through trauma and guilt and therapy who are the victims of Vecna. And I think it's interesting that 3 of these 4 persecuted kids are picked by Vecna, and their trauma doesn't have anything to do with the Upside Down. And I think that is just accurate to the world. Like, yeah, these kids have been fighting monsters for a while, but there are other kids fighting their own kinds of monsters that turn into almost a real entity. Vecna and his effect on these kids is a real, on the nose, but still like worthy example of trauma and depression and all the stuff you go through when you're dealing with that stuff. This trauma is like a real, genuine threat. I think so often so many storylines will throw things at a character, or several characters, that would normally just break down a person. And even in loss, some characters hardly react like a person normally would. And not that everything in fiction has to be realistic, but you do want it to be relatable, I think. And so I think it's smart to put your characters through the things and make it intense. And then ask the question, well, what is this turning into? Like, how is this affecting them on an emotional and mental level? And then what the Duffer Brothers did is, how can we, make that a big old monster? And they do a really good job of using Vecna for that. I love the D&D tie-in with who Vecna is. I think it tied well into 1 and Henry and everything, but you're still scared of the fact that even though Max survives the first time, she's still threatened and she's still not quite safe. That even though you overcome bouts of things and struggles, you're still not always, it's not always going to be easy and not going to just go away. There's just a lot of stories, where someone dies that a character loves and the character reacts and they cry. And then it's like, in the name of this character, I'm going to go on. And that doesn't always, happen. I don't think that that's how I would react if someone I loved died. I think there's a lot of things you'd experience, and I can't say I would know because I haven't been through that like that. But it doesn't go away. Like some stories seem to make it out to be. So you have in Stranger Things, seasons 1 and 2 are often noted to be very similar. I actually really like season 2. I don't know, it didn't need to be totally different for me. I kind of just wanted more of season 1 because that's all I had was season 1. And then by season 3, I think they did the right thing, even though some people really hate season 3, in that they made it fun. The 80s nostalgia was heavy, but it's more colorful. Even with the upside down and stuff that happens to Billy, you also have to deal with the Russians, and that plotline is honestly not very scary. It's just mostly funny and goofy. And so you have that. And then by season 4, I think some people were kind of expecting it to just be a lesser of 3 because of how 2 followed 1. And in season 4, they're like, hey, kids have trauma and they die. And it's like, okay, all right. And so they raised the stakes by asking, what could be more scary than everything we've put these kids through? Because even though 3 was silly, it was still intense, and it had a lot of frightening and kind of gross moments, and stuff with Billy happened. And I'm really thankful that they addressed that stuff with Billy happened, because it affects Max. So I think you build up these characters and a love for them, you create a relatable struggle, and then you care about a specific character with a relatable struggle, and you attack that character. And that raises stakes, that makes things feel real. I wasn't even sure about Max surviving, I felt like she would, but I don't know. And even in the end, how damaged she is and how lost she might be, it's kind of terrifying. And I think that writers could benefit by kind of pausing the plot direction and asking if they are even headed in the right direction. What has your character been through? Would they keep going, Or not even just would they keep going, but how would what they've been through affect them in the future as they continue on their path? And think about it. There have always been Stranger Things memes. We've always loved the characters and found the plot to be interesting and nostalgic and heartfelt, but has it ever been so relatable, except for those who grew up in the 90s, as an emotional level? Has it been this serious? Because if you think about it, if you've seen all the TikToks of people talking about what song would save them from Vecna, you know that they probably also have an experience that Vecna would draw from, because he's the worst, and also because that's what these characters are going through, and that's something people go through. That only one of the 4 kids who are picked by Vecna have been truly hurt by the Upside Down and know that it's the Upside Down, and like what happens to Billy is definitely not just some accident or some trauma from a family member. What happens to the other 3 kids is something that we could understand, and we need to take that seriously, the things that people go through and how it affects a character and how real that threat is, how trauma and guilt and depression are real threats. And it's not that they can't be fought, but I think once we note that, we create real, tangible characters. And I think if you show, you know, a character with power having to fight like mental and emotional issues in order to claim that power and that control, I think that's powerful. That's why people read these stories and watch these shows, and I think it's smart. So it was a good thing that they went with this. It's a good thing that they went with this threat in season 4, and I think they handled it really well. I love kids solving a mystery. I just like all the, I don't know, I just like these characters and I like what they did, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I think it's not even just Max that you're observing her trauma. I think you get a glimpse of that with Elle dealing with Papa. I've even heard some people say that they thought Papa was going to have redemption, or that Elle was cold for not forgiving him. But Dr. Brenner did not deserve forgiveness. He was not helpful to her. He took her from her mother and created her and other children to be, you know, these super kids, and took them away from any nurturing that they could have that was just unconditional love. So I just need to like point out, if people are like, wow, how heartless of her to not forgive him and to not like understand him when he died, like that was a healthy move on her part, because you get hurt by people who claim to love you and you don't have to make them feel better about it. Anyway, so yeah, we go through stuff, and we don't always want to read stories where people go through stuff we've been through because we want to kind of escape. But there is music, and there are friends, and there's always people to help you, and that is something that this story handles really well. So find your favorite song. I'd love to hear down in the comments maybe what song would save you from Vecna, and how your friends have helped you, or stories that you think handle this emotional and mental struggle well and provide hope and also some reality as to what is a threat to our well-being. And yeah, I just hope you all are doing okay. I am doing okay, and I'm excited to see where Stranger Things goes. I may talk more about the story itself, but I think from a writing standpoint, that is what I learned: how to put your characters through it, how to address what they've been through, and how to show that they can get out of it. Anyway, I will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.